If you're interested in knowing how to hang wallpaper stroke lining paper, this is the video for you. Today I'm going to be talking about a lining paper. It's the Wallrock Ultra 210. Now this is a lining paper that is really thick and it's really strong. Even Eddie Hall probably couldn't rip that, or maybe it could. Welcome everybody, welcome to the channel. Today we're on a roll with feature walls. Now this is a feature wall that's going to have another mural wallpaper. That'll be on another video, but I just want to do a quick video on this because it's a new product that I've not tried before. You've seen the thumbnail, you've probably seen the title, you're a little bit intrigued, but this is the Wallrock lining paper. Now it's not just any ordinary lining paper. This is the thickest lining paper Wallrock do as a fibre liner. Now what is it? It's easy to read the label. Right, this is Wallrock and it's the Fibre Liner Ultracover 210. Now the 210 is the key number just there. If you've seen the video weeks back, I was using the Wallrock fibre liner and it was the smooth. Now that was a 150 and that's all to do with the grade of the thickness of the paper. So when I've used Wallrock before, you're looking around about the 150. This is 210, so it's actually a thicker lining paper but still has the same properties that the ordinary fibre liner Wallrock also has, but it's thicker. So when I hear people saying about they use an ordinary lining paper and they have 1400, 1800, 2000 lining paper grade and it is paste the paper, do you know what? You're welcome to it. I'd rather use a paste the wall lining paper like the Wallrock that's fibre infused, that's a good word, infused, that will stop cracks, and it's easier to handle. Some of those thicker papers, I always say anything over 1000 grade lining paper where you're having to paste the paper, it's like hanging cardboard. You've got to be conscious of the soaking times. Ordinary lining paper, 800 grade, you can be 6 and 7 minutes soaking. 1000 grades roughly around about 10 minutes. 1200, 1400 are pushing that 12 to 13, 14 minutes. Start going thicker, yeah, you've got a lot of soaking time there before you can actually hang. Whereas these products from Wallrock, the fibre liner, it is paste the wall, get it on, paste the wall and hang it. Right, so you just want to know a little bit more about this before I crack on with it. I'll have to put my glasses on because the light's not in here is brilliant and I'm getting old. Yeah, I just need glasses for reading. Right, all steamed up. Right, what does it say on here? This fibre liner, right, it allows the walls to breathe, so you've got no problem of trapping anything in. It does allow your walls to breathe. It's vinyl and fiberglass free, which is good. That's probably the reason why it's allowing your walls to breathe. It's quick and easy to hang. It's paste the wall. Paste the wall or the paper, so you can do both, but I would probably say look at the situation of the wallpaper and you've got, you might find that actually pasting the wall is a lot easier to actually apply the product to the surface, to the substrate. Ideal base for paint or paper, and that's what I'm doing. I'm lining this wall because I've got an expensive, that wall there, it's about 3.2 wide by 2.3 on the drop, is roughly about £250 worth of wallpaper on a mural wallpaper. So if I'm spending that sort of money on a mural wallpaper, or the customer is, I would always say line the surface. You're going to say, why are you lining the surface? Do you know what? It gives a lot better surface for you to actually hang your papers over. So don't skimp. If you're putting expensive papers on or you're just papering in general, it's always a good idea to actually put some lining on. But let's go back to this fibre liner. Available in 55 and 100 centimetre widths. You can get them as single rolls and this is a double roll. Enhanced strength and tear resistance. As I said, this is like your traditional Wallrock fibre liner. If you've got bad subsidence, obviously it won't hold off any cracks, but if you've got cracks or bad surface where you've got a lot of like crazy, this is a good product to actually put over the surface. So next bit, it's excellent on rough and damaged surfaces. So if you have got a wall, this isn't one of them. If you have got undulations on your surface and it is a little bit textured because you've got an old-fashioned style house and it might be more of a cement render, a little bit gritty, don't worry, this can still go over it. It is one of the papers that will actually go over surfaces like that. It says ideal for covering and reinforcing wall surfaces. Yeah. You can actually put it on the ceiling as well if you want. And it's the thickest paste wall lining paper available. At the time I'm doing this video, it is. In the future it might not be, they might bring another one out. But what I'm going to be doing, I am going to be getting this on. I won't actually show you hanging paper. There's plenty of videos there on hanging Wallrock. I don't want to go through that. What I want to do is look at what this product is, which we've just gone through the labeling. I want to actually see how it applies and come back to you at the end and tell you my thoughts on what the actual paper's like. Now, before anybody starts, right, preparation of that wall, it was pretty good. I did it a number of years ago. It had on the surface Tickerilla Optiva 5. It's a bit of a durable matte finish Optiva 5. It's not making that wall a porous surface. So what I've gone over the wall with, just to aid adhesion of the paste that I'll be pasting onto the wall, is this product. Right, we've faded in and out. You've seen me talk about this product before. It's the Beeline and it's the primer sealer. This is, let's think of it as, think of it more like a size for your walls. Instead of thinning down your paste or going over the surface with guards, this is an alternative. This promotes adhesion. And because I've got a surface that isn't porous, what I don't want to do is just go straight over that surface with my tub paste, and you can just see it down there. I'm going to be using the Albany, it's the yellow top wall covering adhesive. You can get that from Brewers. Instead of just going straight onto that surface that isn't porous, rolling it and then hanging the paper straight over the top. What I want to do, I want to aid the adhesion of that surface by applying some of this primer sealer. Now, this is dilute to taste. Read the back of the label, because this can go over multitudes of surfaces, glossy surfaces. It can go over metals and things like that, stuff that's a problem surface to get adhesion. You would be using this as a mix of 1-to-1, which is in effect like 50% mix. Now, a 50% mix. If you are going over something that's a porous surface and you want to actually use it as something to take out that porosity of the surface, it's a 1-to-3 ratio mix. So 1 part of this and 3 parts clean water. So yeah, I'm using this mainly to get a coating on that surface, which I've already done, and it's dry, to aid the adhesion for when I actually put the paste over the top. Some of you are going to say it's a bit overkill, but you know what? I've got it here. I can use it. It doesn't take long to dry. I've been done a couple of hours. And what I'm going to do is then paste onto there, knowing that I have an adhesion element property that will help with the paste going onto the surface to aid the application of that lining paper. But check it out. Read the blurb on the internet. Watch my other video that I've done there about it if you want to know a little bit more. But it's a really nice product to use, and I've already got this now pre-made up for this sort of situation because I've used quite a bit of it, and now put it back in the tub. Right, saying that, I'm going to crack on. I've got the Albany paste down there. I will be hanging vertical. Now the width, you know what the width is, 55. I will be hanging top to bottom. I won't be doing horizontal cross lining. I don't need to horizontal cross line. I know where the lengths of the finished wallpaper will be going because they only measure up at roughly about 490. So 490 millimeters, 49 centimeters. I know where they'll go from left to right. That being 55 and a 49, it's not going to correspond on the joints. If you do have concerns about where your joints will be, you can always measure them out and make sure that you know where the drops were going to be falling. But if in doubt, just go back to hanging cross lining, horizontals. But as I've said before in many videos, don't be hung up on actually doing cross lining. You don't need to do it all the time. Do it when it suits you, and if you know what you're doing and you know what you're doing with your hanging of your paper, you can actually start from a different position and know that your joints aren't going to be corresponding with your lining paper joints. If you're a professional like I am, you'll know how to do that. So I'm going to get this out. I'm going to start hanging from that corner there all the way down. It'll take me less than an hour, and we'll see what it's like at the end. I'm hoping with this being a fibre lining product, once it's on, I'm not going to see any pullback on any joints. Normally I've found that the fibre liner stuff, the smooth, is very good on the joints. The only time you'll get your joint opening slightly is probably if you've got an undulation in the wall and the paper only goes where it wants to go. You know, get it but as possible, get your seam roller on it, wipe the top edges down and around the sides, and away you go. And while I'm mentioning that, I don't know whether you can see on here, there was a slight crack on the underside of the coving. I've raked that out, and when I was going around with the Beeline primer sealer, I went onto the coving slightly to actually like pre-prime it before I went over with some caulk, and the caulk that I went around that bottom edge with is, can you see that red devil? It's the one-time caulk. That was probably just over 3/4 of an hour ago, so that will be gone off now for me to actually start papering. And I know you're probably saying to me about that primer sealer. Yes, it is a product that if you go over the coving or the top edge of your skirting, you don't have to be wiping it off, because as it is an adhesion aiding primer sealer, it's not like going over the surfaces with paste, i.e. thin down paste or your tub paste, packet paste, flake paste. It's not going to cause a problem with anything you paint over it, because it is actually a product that you can put on pre-painting. So that's one of the reasons I've used it. I don't have to be too critical about going onto the coving or the top edge of the skirting board, which is just down there. Right, let's crack on. I'll see you later on. So this paper, it's very thick. Can you see it? I don't know whether you can. It feels thick. It feels very much like a cardboard. If you've been used to using, let's call it 1,400 lining paper, you'd probably say it's very much on the line of those higher end 1,000, 1,400, 1,600, 1,800, 2,000 gauge grade lining papers. This is very thick. I'm going to be hanging off there. I'm going to hang off the roll. I'm going to be, as it comes off the roll, that's the side that will go against the wall, and it should be all right. I've got a sharp blade for cutting top and bottom, and I'm going to say to you, you know, one of the reasons that you line is to actually help with insulation on a wall surface, and it's not so much insulation for heat retention or anything like that. It just adds that little bit more paper to the surface. That is an outside wall. When it's cold, you could probably get little bits of mold spores come in and things like that. This will help protect that expensive paper that you're going over the top. So that's one of the reasons that you do lining. It helps with a better base for your wallpapers to go over. It actually helps for stopping joints and seams springing on your top finished wallpapers, and just in general it is a lot nicer to actually paper over if you've got a properly prepared lined surface. So that said, I'm going to get this on now and catch you in a bit. Like to come in and interject into the video. What I've done, I've pasted that, and I can tell that I've actually put a sealer over it because it went on nicely. Even though we were going over an Optiva 5, which isn't a porous surface, you can actually feel that adhesion. It might be a bit the placebo effect, you know. You're thinking that it's making a difference, it might not do, but I know that the adhesion of the actual Beeline primer sealer is actually helping with the application of that paste. I know some of you are going to say, what about your paste? Yes, you can actually use the Wallrock paste as well, but I do find that that yellow top Albany paste is equally as good. So if you are probably an amateur DIYer, and if in doubt, I'm going to say to you, stick with the Wallrock paste that's recommended for using with this paper. And this is one of the papers that can go over the thermal lining paper as well. You've seen me use the thermal insulation lining paper, which is the Graphite Plus. It also goes over the thermal KV 600 insulation paper as well. So all in all, it's a good all-round one. Just be mindful, it is thick. I've pasted a good 2 lots of drops there. Don't be frightened of doing that. I would say if you are going over areas that are tricky cuts and things like that, don't go too far with your paste because you don't want it drying off. I've actually put enough on that I know that it's not going to dry off on me too quick. You can see it there shiny to go in a matte finish. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not getting a plumb bob out, I'm not getting a laser out, I'm going to hang to the angle. If it does run off a bit, it shouldn't do. I will just bump it across and make sure that I get it all the way into the angle and then drop it and trim the top and trim the bottom. So I'll show you a little bit of that and let's see how we go. I've just put it on the floor and I've drawn it straight up. Pushed it into the angle. I'm happy with that. I'm going to move my steps out of the way, get it trimmed at the bottom and then manipulate it where I need to. I've got a pair of shears. I've actually got a blade in the pocket, in my pocket, and I have got the cutting straight edge. I've got my plastic smoother squeegee as well, so I'll use that once I've got it trimmed at the bottom. Bit of a fast forwarded, hanging a couple of lengths there. Now, always have a bucket of warm water with you and a sponge, clean water, just to wipe off any paste that goes onto the surfaces that you don't want any paste on, because you don't want that drying, and then when the heat comes on and it dries out naturally in the room, it starts crazing, crackling and flaking off. Now, I've done those 2 drops. I've got butt joints on those. I'm going to say tight as nun's knickers, whether that's politically correct or not, I'm still going to say it. Tight as nun's knickers. They are butt jointed beautifully. I've just ran over, not literally ran over, but I've just used a seam roller. Now, if you don't know what one of these is, particularly this one, this just presses down your seams to get them in place. If anything, just might be a little bit proud and sticking up. Now, what's unusual about this seam roller, it's they call it a double arm, and if you look at the shape of it, it's actually a barrel seam roller, because it looks like, you know what Coopers make? Coopers make barrels, don't they? So that is actually a bit of useless information if you didn't already know. That's why you get pubs called the Coopers Arms, because the barrel makers. That is the shape of a barrel, so you can actually use that side over to that. It's not a flat. If I show you, these are like a resiny plastic. That's a peacock one. That to me is a little bit too firm. I like to use a wooden one. I've got a little bit more pressure. I can apply that to that without actually damaging any paper. I find those edges are a little bit sharp. They could do with just rounding off slightly. But that's for another day. But that's what I've done. I've just gone up and down the seams there to get them down. I'm going to finish off now. You can see I'm 2 lengths in. I'm going to be another 2. I'll probably about 6 drops and then we'll be done. So I'll catch you in a bit. So far so good. Just be very mindful, this is a thick paper. It feels like you're dealing with thick paper. When you're coming up to the edges and the angles, make sure you're pushing them in far enough. press it well in, because you might think you're in and actually you're not, across your, particularly bottom of your coving edge. But so far so good. The blades have cut through it, no problem. It's a nice paper to cut through, with it being that non-woven. Catch you in a bit. Right, I've done that. It's coming to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I wasn't far off. It was a 6 lengths cut into the corner, no problem. It cuts a dream. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back tomorrow and see actually how it's dried out. I want to see what the joints are like. Currently I've got butt joints, but do they move? Do they slightly open up like a lot of non-woven paste the wallpapers do? Let's have a good conflab tomorrow and let's assess what this paper is actually like as a lining paper. Now, is it one of these papers that is really good for hanging paper over, but not so good for actually painting over, because the joints have slightly opened up a fraction? I don't know, let's have a look tomorrow. But hanging it, no problem. It is a thick paper, be conscious of that. Make sure you've got strong blades and you shouldn't have any problems with it. But what I'm gonna do now is leave it. I'm not gonna have any heating on. I'm gonna let it dry naturally, so we're not forcing the drying element of it. Let it do its own thing, and I will see you tomorrow and we'll have that conflab. I said I'd be back and I've had a good night's sleep, and we're coming in for a bit of a conclusion on actually what this paper dried like. Now, yesterday I was talking about butt joints and doing lining and making sure you got your butt joints. I've got to be honest, within about 4 hours, or after I'd started doing this, that original joint there, can you just see it? I can see it on the camera, looking at the camera just there, and I'm putting my finger. That joint has slightly opened up a fraction. And when I mean a fraction. Now, because the paper is light coloured and the background was pretty dark, clearly I can see where that joint is. Now, 6 lengths. Everyone's done the same. Everything's just pulled back slightly. Now, I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to ask the question, non-woven paste the wall papers, do you notice a slight pullback, shrink back when you're using them? This is to all the professional decorators. If you're an amateur, if you're a DIY and you're not doing enough papering and experimenting and trying these sorts of non-woven wallpapers, you probably won't notice it. But if you're a professional painter and decorator, when it comes to using these non-woven lining papers, and I'm even going to put it out there, there are some papers, finished papers, that have the same sort of characteristic. I'm going to say characteristic, i.e. that once they dry out, there's a slight pullback. Now, these papers should be, i.e. stable products. They shouldn't be moving. They're a paste the wall. They're not a paste the paper, even though this Ultra 210 and other Wallrock products, you can actually paste the paper. But being a paste the wall paper, non-woven, paste the wall, you're not expecting things to expand and contract because it is a stable product. It goes on, it stays where it is. It isn't affected by the paste soaking into it. But is this something we've got to be aware of? Is it something that we've got to speak to manufacturers about? I don't know. Should we accept that papers pull back slightly? I've said to customers over the years that being a non-woven wallpaper, there's the fors and against. This is whether it be a lining paper or actually a finished paper. It's a cleaner sort of product to hang. You're not having to paste the paper. You're not having to wait for soaking times. You've not got sticky little bits of paper that you've cut when you've trimmed. It is a case of just getting it on the wall and you can move on. Actual time-wise for hanging these papers is probably a lot quicker. But I've noticed on some papers, there is that little bit of a shrink back. Possibly you won't get the shrink back if you'd used an ordinary, let's call it a pulp paper, an ordinary traditional paste the paper, where, paste the paper, Peter paper, blah, 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 where your soaking times might be 6, 7, 8 minutes. As long as you give the papers the correct soak time, shouldn't be expanding and shouldn't be pulling back. But non-wovens, what do we think? Is that a bit of a characteristic that there is a slight pullback and we accept it? Now, going back to this Ultra 210, dream to hang, it is a little bit thicker, so just be mindful. And I did say yesterday, minutes ago, when you're putting up to the bottom of the covings or your tops of your skirtings, make sure you run your fingers across that top edge first, get your squeegee spatula in, and make sure that you're not thinking that the edge is there and you cut accidentally too short. Make sure you get it in. It is that little bit thicker that it goes where it wants to go. So you make it go where you want it to go, i.e. top edge of the skirting or bottom edge of the coving. Now, it did go on well. You've got to be mindful of that thicker paper. As I said yesterday, took me less than an hour to do that. Feel of the quality, it is a lovely smooth finish. There would be no problem painting over that, and I would probably even say that even though there's a slight gap on those, I don't want to say gap, slight pullback on those joints, and it is slight, but it is even top to bottom. I think your paint, if you were painting this, would go and fill that and you would disguise it. So don't worry about a slight pullback on those joints. Everything feels down. I've got no springing edges. That paste that I used, which was the Albany yellow top paste, clearly there was no issues with that. That actually worked really well with the paper. And all in all, I think it's a really good paper. If you're wanting a stronger, thicker lining paper that is a paste the wall, this is the one that you need to go for. Don't go for the thinner ones. Another thing I'm going to say about lining papers is the reason using lining paper is it evens the surface of what you're going over. Now, if this was a very random coloured wall, i.e. they'd been chopping out, they'd been plastering, there'd been patches of different colour over the years because it was an older house, lining paper goes over that and it gives you a sound surface. In effect, it's like painting the wall one even colour. But we don't want to do that. We want to give a proper surface for your actual wallpapers. Now, some wallpapers, you can hold them up into the light and you can put your fingers behind them and you can see shadowing because it's quite a thinnish paper. Thinner papers would actually show through any mismatched colours underneath that paper. Hence why you actually put a lining paper on to give an even surface for colour. So, all in all, I'm going to say it's a really nice paper. Give it a go if you're looking for something a little bit thicker and you want the ease of pasting the wall. I've done my usual this morning. I've gone around and just put a fine bead of cork just around the top edges, around the wall, top edge of the skirting, all ready for actually painting, and that will make it a lot easier when I put the feature mural on that wall for when I do my cuts into the angles. Now, I'm not going to say to you, please subscribe, because if you're subscribed, great. But what I'm going to say to you is please watch the videos at the end, because watching videos helps my channel immensely. Thank you very much, everybody. See you on the next one.